Anybody can make a hole, but to make the part fit the car as if it was a factory stamp piece, that's where the trick lies. Look guys, me make hole. Welcome to iNVision Prototypes, I'm Nick, bringing you another installment on the M40C saga. Now most days around here, I'm the resident floor sweeper. However, today, we're gonna make another hole in this fender so that we can fit the taillights. But we're not going to be using these Sergeant style taillights. We're going to be using these after we use this on them. And you got to trust me on this because once we're done with them, they will work. Don't go hitting that stop or skip button. Just bear with me, please. Now we've got a second hole. Now, if we went ahead and used these classic original style taillights, they're a little bit too small for this size of body. If you recall from the earlier episodes, we've increased the size of this body by about 5% as compared to an original 40 Ford. So these will be too small. If we double them up, they won't flow with each other. And if we kind of space them out like that, it won't look right. And then there's one more issue that we have to deal with. And that's why we're gonna use this Mustang taillight. Once we have everything figured out, then we'll go and cut the real one up. So what we have to do is take and cut off this part of the taillight as well as this perimeter black molding here, leaving us this part right here. And that way we have our taillight as well as the backup light. I want to incorporate both together. So that's going to work out quite well. We'll have our brake, signal, and running light all within this red area. It's a little bit larger than the Sergeant style, and it looks more modern. Now the thing with this is we can't just take and stick this in that hole. We want this to kind of look period correct. So what we have to do is create a bezel. This is the passenger side that I was working with earlier, and you can see some telltale signs of some masking tape. I was playing with a few different configurations. I took the tape off because I was done with it, but kind of the glue kind of got left behind, so you can kind of see where we're going with this. And from this shape, I developed a bezel that will overlay that taillight and give it a more period correct look. Now there's a few little modifications we have to make to the bezel. This is just a prototype. It's a little bit too thin on the sides, leaving too much space for these radiuses here. So what we're gonna do, or what I have to do in CAD, is kind of widen that out and adjust it. Not a problem. But what we're after is the curvature to fit it up to the fender. Now you can see this curvature through here. It matches the top curvature of this fender exactly. And what we're gonna do is sink this whole thing in, enlarging this hole, sink this whole thing in into the fender so that this peak of the fender runs down this peak down through here and then continues on through there. And that way it'll be blended in with the fender, giving us that Sergeant style look, but modern. What do you think? Put it down in the comments. Now you might be asking how I came up with this shape from the shape of the fender. And I don't have a point cloud scanner where I can put those little markers all over the fender, take the gun, scan it, import that into CAD. I did the manual way. I basically took a picture of the taillight after I'd masked off where I didn't want to see certain areas and got some dimensions on that, imported that picture into CAD, scaled it, and it worked from there. Now this curvature, again, I took that curvature, imported that into CAD, and worked with those dimensions and those constraints to develop this shape here. And it didn't come out too bad. This is actually gonna, like I said, sit within the fender itself. So we're gonna have to take and enlarge this hole a little bit more, a lot more, and sink this whole thing in. And that way it'll give us that classic look while giving us a modern taillight. Now being this is the passenger side bezel, we're gonna go back over there and start enlarging the hole to get this part to fit. Worst case, if we can't get it to fit properly, we can just take all these pieces we cut out, I've saved them, and weld them back into the holes, smooth it all out, and just go back to rolling the window down and use our arm to indicate where we're turning or stopping or going straight ahead. I got a question for you guys. Who still remembers what the signals mean? Put it down in the comments. I've heard that a lot of people don't know what these mean anymore. They probably think that you're working at a Charlie horse. So anyway, Okay, let's stick this in from the back side and see how it looks where we're going. I'm going to kind of sit like that. Now this hole is way too small. You don't want to go too large too fast. In terms of height-wise, I'll have to make sure that the curvature of the light is sitting at the correct curvature of this fender. As we approach this lower part of the fender, the curvature increases a bit too rapidly. So I think we're going to be sitting up in through here, bottom of the tail light being there, and the top over here. There we go. It's going to sit about there, and that's really how high up we have to go. That's quite a bit. Okay, so given that that's going to be the bottom of the backup light, that corresponds to this line here, we're just going to take and drop down and line up our point with the point on the fender. Come down to here and just do a rough scribe. Again, we're going to do this a little at a time, kind of work our way up to it. I've never done this before. Honestly, I figure get it on video and then you guys can laugh, get some entertainment when things don't work out. It seems those kind of videos are a little more popular than a positive, constructive video. Okay. So, I'm not sure if you guys can tell from the taillight, this surface area is a little bit larger and it corresponds to the larger surface area in the fender, and this one's a bit smaller. So I have my fingers crossed and toes crossed that this is going to work out. Wow, that looks like a huge hole. I guess that's right. That's wrong. Can you guys see why? See, I'm getting a little too far ahead of myself. Okay, so the bottom is correct, that's fine. I'll explain why. This bottom point is the external surface of the fender. This line I scribed across the top is not the external surface of the fender. External surface is right here. So we actually have to drop down, get dimension on that, drop down, and make the line down here somewhere. So what I'm going to do for the moment is do something like this. Then we're going to step in and start cutting away and fitting this as we're enlarging the hole. The other thing is, you may have seen these little dark spots here, thinking that I didn't finish it. It was kind of difficult to reach all the way around with these panels in place and detail that. Once we had this hole here, it's going to make things a whole lot easier to reach in with a hammer and dolly and finalize all these little imperfections in the fender. And really, why was there any point of finishing this area when it's going to be cut away? So always a reason why I do something. Anyway, let's get working on this. Put it here. There's a weld there, so hopefully that weld will go away. I'm going to step in about 1/4 inch. Something like that. Normally I would just take the zip blade and cut it, but just to illustrate to you guys where this is going to be, we're going to do something like that. So I'm going to take and cut that out right now. We're getting closer. See? Now I've got this sitting up from behind. Let's see if I can get you guys in and show you how well the curvature fits with this bezel. Now there's a burr there, but I'm not going to clean it up because it'll probably be cutting way more. But you can see how well that bezel fits with the sheet metal. Looking good. Let's keep going. The other thing I want to do is to create a bit of a seat, just like all the other parts. I don't want a raw hole that this is going to fall through. I need this to sit on some sheet metal. The edge of this one has to be cleaned up a little bit, but like I said, this isn't going to be used as in the final one because these radiuses and this thickness is incorrect. And this is just a prototype. Except I can trust the outside edge, so that's where we're going to. I'm liking that. And that all works there. I'm going to start creating a seat all the way up. I'm going to wipe all the marks off, rescribe it, and start creating that seat with the flanging tool or seating tool, whatever you want to call it. Anybody can make a hole, but to make the part fit the car as if it was a factory stamped piece, that's where the trick lies. The top we're going to leave for now because that'll have to be cut away. This angle does not match what we have here. We can kind of fake it in by doing something like that. That might have to come up a little bit, but we'll see. I think we have too much material here, so I'm going to take and cut away a little bit more, and we can start flanging that. Should we save that in case we need to put the sheet metal back? I don't think so. I think we're pretty committed at this point. That's going to be good there. Let's get the flanging tool out. I'm taking grind this first, get rid of that burr. That's really sharp. And there we have our flanging tool. This is going to be using to create this step. Now I have to make sure that we're stamping it the right way. I need this surface to go down below this surface. So I think that's going to be it right there. We just tighten up to, let's see, 20 gauge right there. I'm kidding. Can't tell how many gauge we're setting this to just by feel. Now the first pass is always rough. If you go back to the fuel door, which I'll put a card up at the top, you see how we went about doing this. It's a very tedious process, but it saves us putting the whole fender quarter panel into our reciprocator and doing it that way. You see all those rough bite marks? That'll all be gone. Now we'll probably have to cut that center weld just so the pieces where this these two flanges move inward, because that's going to hold us up right now. But while it's holding the panel, we're going to keep stepping. And this way, we can also put a seal on this to prevent any moisture, water, rain, whatever, getting into the trunk. Got to think ahead. All right. It's not bad there. This flange here, I've just stepped it. I'm gonna have to flatten this back out or try moving it inward a little bit more. It's not quite enough. Let's take and bring that radius down. And we'll do all this on one side, but then we have to do it on the other side as well. Don't need to hammer it out. Just move the jaws inward, allowing the sheet metal to get more of a bite, or move the sheet metal inward so that this gets more of a bite. the second one. I think it's time to cut that, move it in. Okay, so we are getting very, very close to where it has to be at the bottom, but the top is way, way out. Now right now I'm just roughing the shape in. I'm not being too critical on cleanliness.
Cleanliness.
I'm going to put this across the top just for fun. And I should figure out how much that drops down. Three-quarters of an inch. That'll be taken and rolled upward, thereby creating, again, a flange inside that this slides into. Still have a ways to go to get this to fit properly, but we're getting there. So this is a ABS filament. It's comparable to what's on your car. See, those corners have to move up a little bit more. Got the bottom fitting in nice. What I can do is kind of thin this out a little bit more at the top, and that'll allow it to sneak up a little bit higher, because I do want to retain that flange there. I'll have to make all these final adjustments in CAD before we print the next setup. Okay, we're getting in closer. So if we go up a 1/4 inch up here, allowing that to come up to where it needs to be, the bottom will jump in, and we should be there. Okay, so we are getting very close. The corners have to be adjusted, and then like that, it should just drop right in with a flange all the way around that we can seal to this bezel to prevent any moisture from going in. So that's gonna take me a few minutes, but while I was working on this, I was just thinking about our next project called Afterburner. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Now, how that came about, you'll see it in a second. Buddy and I, Keith, went to a local cruise night. We took R2, and afterwards you stopped by a local fast food outlet. I'm not gonna say which one, it doesn't matter. He had I think it was a spicy chicken with onion rings. I had a Royale with cheese and some fries. Royale with cheese. It's been a long time since I've had one of those. Anyway, I digress. He was really impressed as to how R2 came out. He saw the car being built over the course of its time in the shop here, and he was just blown away by the performance of the car. It just sucked him back in the seat, and it just took his breath away. So he asked us to build him a Roadster, and this is going to be something he's been wanting for quite a while. He's into the Ford GT. Well, give me a second, I'll get you a sketch. Okay, I want you guys to close your eyes, clear your mind, and just imagine a really cool hot rod Roadster. Never mind, open your eyes. Perhaps not a good idea. Here, check this out. Now this is a really loose, quick ideation sketch on a napkin nonetheless that I came up with while he was chatting about what he wanted. He's really into the 2018 Ford GT, you know, the car with the ducting around the back of the cab, as well as late model Dodge Challengers. He loves those cars, and he's hoping to take the best parts of those cars and kind of bring them together into a Roadster. And once he saw the sketch, well, he fell in love with it. We came up with the renderings as well as the 2-dimensional quarter scale and full-size drawings. The full-size ones are being printed as we speak, so we can get them up on the wall and start the wireframe buck. In the meantime, We've been working on the chassis, and that's almost ready to go and get set up on a frame table in here so we can start the wireframe buck and then the body. Now he's looking after sourcing a Gen 2 EcoBoost Ford engine, the V6, as well as the rest of the drivetrain. In the meantime, we'll get some stuff mocked up in its place so we can get all the proportions right and start building the body for that car. Because while it won't take as long as the 40 Ford, it's going to take some time. And I hope you guys jump on for that ride because it's going to be really, really fun. Stay tuned. Now let's get back on to these taillights. Trial fitment 328.121. And that's coming in really close for this preliminary prototype bezel. Right now, what I'm concerned about is just kind of flushing things up, getting the shape to come in to the side of the fender here. Gap is a little bit large. Oh, right there. Gotta hold your tongue just right. Yeah, it looks good. And we're lined up at the point here, at the top, at the bottom, and at the top. So there we go. See, that took quite a bit of time to get to this stage because we just had to keep moving these features, these reveals around until they fit the bezel that we created. Now, when we print a new one for the passenger side, this will be wider. And then at that point, I'll know where to trim this off. And then the other thing I have to add on are two, I don't know what you'd call them, receivers or slugs on the backside here that you can take and put a screw in from the backside to hold this bezel in place. The top is held in place by the top of the fender there. That will not come out. What we have to do, pop it in and have those two little protrusions, cylindrical protrusions with a hole in the middle so that it snaps in, goes through the sheet metal, and then the flush on the backside with the screw so that we can take and put the screw in from the backside. And there we go. So before starting the driver's side, I'm going to take and prepare this tail light, and then we'll print up one more bezel and start fitting the driver's side in place. I can't do that until that bezel is printed because we need to conform the hole to the bezel. Now this light here, we have to take and basically remove just this section, which is going to entail cutting away this trim here and splitting it right down the middle. There's a space between these two housings, so we're not going to interfere with the reflector inside of this light. We just have to be very careful that we don't cut into it. First things first, let's get rid of this perimeter black band. Even though this is a donor, I'm not just haphazardly chopping it up. I'm taking my time and just treating it as if it's the final piece, because that's how I get my practice when cutting the final piece. That's hot. You know what? I should wear my proper PPE. That's safer. Now, just using this one as a reference, I want to see exactly where that seam is, and I think that I will just go straight down the middle. Make one gentle or one careful cut, kind of a score, see how things go, and then make the final cut. That's it. So now let this plastic cool off and it'll just come off like that. And now we have our driver's side. Take a few hours to print up the new bezels. And once those are done, then we can get this driver's side installed. There we go. So this is the original 40 Ford Sergeant light, or Sergeant badge light, whatever you want to call it. You can see how much larger we are. Almost the same width, but double in height. a little more. And that's gonna suit the body a little better than if we just put one of these on. So that's gonna come out quite nice. Let's see how the taillight fits into that hole. Yeah. Let's slide this down right there. And that's gonna look quite nice. So you can see the point of the fender carries on through the bezel down here. And the back of the bezel is relatively flat, but maintains the same curvature of the fender and the curvature of that taillight so that it can flush fit to the rear. And then we'll have a little seal around the perimeter to prevent any moisture from going in. Once I print up the second bezel, the final bezel, take two. Once I print up the final bezel, then we'll know where to seat the light from behind. And then at that point, I'll create the brackets for these fasteners so we can hold this taillight or bolt this taillight to the fender. And then that'll fix that in place. And then that other little trick I mentioned earlier about adding a light, we're gonna take and knock a hole in the bottom, and that's gonna be the driving light. So when you have your driving, parking lights on, whatever you wanna call them, that'll be illuminated through a light bulb from the bottom. And it has to miss the reverse light. It's not a very large light. It's not like one of these, and that'll take care of that. If you noticed, we had 3 lights in a row, so we have to take and accommodate for that extra or missing light bulb later on. And I'll show you how you go about doing that. A little trick behind that. Always a trick behind something, but not everybody shares that. We're gonna share that. I'm gonna take and mock this up from behind. Can't mount it yet because we need to print a new bezel with the modifications. We have to add the width to the sides, and we have to add the little slugs to the back of this, or those little cylindrical mounting tabs, so that we can actually fix the bezel in place, bring the light up from behind, mount the light, let all this go, make sure everything looks good, and then take and finalize the sheet metal to the bezel. Just kind of tighten things up a little bit. It's close, but it's not there yet. So I'm gonna wrap this episode up at this point, guys. I appreciate you guys watching. If you like the way we tackled this little design element on the car, hit the like button. I appreciate that. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It helps grow our channel. The little bell up there, if you hit that, you get notification when we get the Afterburner project started. Until next time, guys, take care.